Post this everywhere. Okay. And we are live. Now, I am going to quickly lower my audio a little bit. And then, can you talk real quick?
Hello.
Okay, you sound fine for now. Alright, so today's topic, as you can see there, is tilt and mental in games, or just mental in games in general. The good side, the bad side. And I know I'm gonna love talking about the bad side because, well, what we mean by mental is how are your emotions, and like some people don't use their emotions. Like when it comes to competitive stuff, you don't want to let your emotions get in the way. So you got like your logical side and your emotional side of your mental, and it's good to have both. People who play casually will probably mainly be using the emotional part, and people who play competitively will probably mainly be using the logical part. And then sometimes people play competitively and use some of the emotional parts, and some people who play casually wind up using some of the logical parts anyway, and then find out sometime down the line that they want to go pro with it. So that's kind of what we mean by mental, just to define that real quick. And Trickster, why don't you
Hello.
introduce yourself and give yourself a little introduction on this subject here?
Hello. Um, I mean, it's essentially what you said, right? It's essentially talking about like how games can affect you more than just, emotionally speaking, right? 'Cause it can be a lot of things for a lot of different people, and because games are like just like any form of entertainment, really, cinema, art, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
games can elicit some visceral reactions from people,
Yeah.
right? And you can also do a lot of things in the long term on top of it. So that's what I think we're going to explore today, and see what happens,
Uh-huh.
essentially.
So, oh,
Where
Jesus
do I
Christ.
want to
Sorry.
start?
I had to clear my throat.
Uh-huh.
um, yeah. So, I am a fighting game enthusiast, as one could say. Trickster and I both have a knack for playing Guilty Gear Strive. And since we both play Guilty Gear Strive a lot, I feel like fighting games is a good place to start for us, just because it's something we know. Um, Fighting games it's really easy in fighting games to let your I mean it's really easy in any games to let your mental uh go south like really quick. But the unique part about fighting games is that in fighting games you are the only person in control of your side of the match, and then your opponent's the only person in control of their side of the match. So it's a 1v1 with no teammates. Meaning that if you win, you won because of you. If you lose, you lost because of you. So some people still find ways to blame things other than themselves on losses or W's. For example, if you lose, you could say, ah, my opponent was just better, GG's. But some people might want to say, oh, I lost because my opponent's character is overpowered. Or, oh, I lost because the sun was in my eyes. or my dog ate my inputs. You know, I messed up an input here or whatever. And yeah, maybe you did mess up an input, but, you know, usually there's more to it in the match than I messed up an input and that's the whole reason you lost. It could just be that your opponent's better. There's a lot of people who don't want to accept that. And that's what we're here to talk about today. uh, like, if you lost, you know, chances are you lost because your opponent is just better than you. And this is strictly speaking in 1v1 games and fighting games. Like any 1v1 game. Like it could be a fighting game, it could be a card game. Any 1v1 game. You want to elaborate a little bit?
So what I've always like thought about, like, I mean, I guess in this genre in particular is like, it is really something that is, um I don't want to say, how to explain it. It is one of these, like compared to like other genres, fighting games is a little special in the sense that like it really elicit a strong response from people in general, people playing fighting games for different reason. Either you're in a camp where, like, you can see fairly evidently the fruits of your efforts, right? You put the time and effort, and then you get the W, and then you're filled with that emotional rush of, wow, all the efforts and all the stuff that I put in
Mm-hmm.
there paid off, and then, boom, I got the
Hi, Twinkie.
hello.
Welcome to the stream for the first time. Sorry for interrupting you. I just thought I'd say hi. Welcome.
It's Winky. Hello.
Anyway, go on.
Ni hao, ni hao. Uh, so yeah, I was saying that, like, the thing about that, like, whenever you win, right? It's not just for fighting games. It can be anything, right? Especially when you're in a position where, like, you put your efforts, and like you put a lot of efforts into something, and then you finally got the win or achieve something that you couldn't do before, right?
Yeah.
You get filled with that emotional rush of, like, hey, I did
Yeah.
it. Hype moments, that is a piercing uh scream on Twitch or YouTube video or whatever, right?
Yeah. It fills you with a sense of accomplishment.
It is really that sense of accomplishment. Right, on the flip side, right? Especially when you're talking about, like, if we're only starting by talking about, like, more competitive games, right? You can have the opposite happen, like that soul crushing realization of, like, they were better than you. When I mean they, what are you talking about? Like the opposing team, or or the single opponent that was in front of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were better than you, and they think they did things better than you. You got outsmarted for X, Y, and Z reason, right? And then you will have to deal with the realization that this happened to you, right? This um this kind of sensation you will have to live with. And essentially, this is like the weird dichotomy that is, like, within, like, victory and defeat. because people will put a lot of emphasis into that because you play a game, all right? But then a game where it is like, you know, if you're playing against somebody, you do want to win. You do want to try to win and do your best to do so, right?
Yep.
Losing is not something that you inherently desire because there's no reason to. And so there is then, starting from here, a large variety of like reactions that you can have from people, like emotional reaction and how it affects you mentally. You have, between at the beginning who some people would take it as a lesson, like lesson defeat. It's like, oh, you lost, but like you can take that loss as oh something to say, hey, I will better myself for next time. Or you could go into like this weird anger situation that can arise. Like you can start spewing out
Yeah.
excuses, and even it can go even further where, like, I mean, there's been so many instances in any genre of game where like people even resorted to violence to the extreme end.
Yikes. Yeah. I've seen recordings of stuff like that happening before.
It's
But
like it's
Twinkie
very easy to find.
In the chat already brought up the term that is widely used of ego is like fighting games. PvP games is really easy to fuel people's ego. It's not just PvP games. Any game can fuel a person's ego. Any game, period.
Yeah, it,
When
it
when
can
you
be any game.
win,
Like,
a lot of people tend to let the winning get to their head, and that is when we say people get a big ego. And people, when they have big ego, when they take a loss, you know, a lot of the times they just don't want to accept that. There's
no, no, that's for sure. And Boogie is right in the fact that, like, well, as long as you're having fun, even if you lose, it's fine, right?
yeah,
You you can, have fun in the loss because you had a good time, playing the game that you and your opponent enjoyed. And even if you lost and you didn't win, you had a good time, and well, you can even take lessons off of that loss, and you're like, well, hooray, you know?
yeah. And like different people lose differently, different people win differently, as in how do people react to losing or winning. So let's
Yep.
go over some of these different forms of losing and winning. Me personally, the way I win and lose, well, I with my favorite game in particular, Guilty Gear Strive, I think it's a super fun game. So since think the game's so fun, if I lose or if I win, I tend to take it in stride, as in like it doesn't really affect me because most of the time I'm just having fun. Like there are a few times where like I can get a little bit competitive, and like if I lose a few times, I might start to be like, man, why can't I play neutral, for example? Or why do you know everything? Why does it feel like you know everything that I'm about to do? Feels like I can't win. Like these are questions that I've asked before. Um, but usually, like only sometimes do I change my behavior when I lose, not so much when I win. When I win, I'm always humble. And if it sounds like I'm not being humble, I'm probably just fucking with you because I'm a clown. How about you, Trickster? How do you tend to like handle your wins and your losses?
Like you were saying, it depends on how you have fun in fighting games. Sometimes fumbling around in spaghetti is fun. Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely depends how you consider having fun and how you play fighting games in general. Like, how do you visualize this, right?
Mm-hmm.
as to answer your question, then how do I generally am, I don't want to say indifferent. I have this horrible tendency to beat myself more than everybody else, even if I don't say anything for the most part.
Hmm, that's no good.
And it is definitely like, I guess it's some aspect of everything, right?
Yeah, I
It's
mean
like
it's good to give yourself criticism, but you don't want to go too far.
in my case in general, I have this tendency of going way further that is actually necessary, of simple criticism of like, sure, you did that, it's wrong, but then I tend to go so far as it's uh related to your self-worth. And I think that's something that like you can talk about, like it mental in general, right? Because especially it's maybe not even, it's prevalent just in games, like especially games that are like a little difficult, because an example that I have is like Dark Souls, for example. Dark Souls has been this series that's been regarded as this like
Hmm. Hmm.
fairly difficult. It is not casual player. You will need to actually,
Invest
take
time.
time
Yeah.
and invest time, because otherwise you will never be able to finish any Dark
Yeah,
Souls,
and that's a good
right?
point.
Because
That's a good point.
they are brutal.
But
And
yeah,
uh, and like a lot of people attach, their performances to like any game, which whether it is like um competitive games, team-based games, or even single-player games, they attach their self-worth to it, because they're like, it would be something along the line of like, if I can't do it, then what am I good for?
yeah.
And you can go into this rabbit hole of, you know, I can't do this, and then yada 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 yada. Despite that, even no matter the actual like proof of that, right? Is it actually real or not, right?
I would have to say it's not real. Like, what I mean by that is like if you can't do something right now, it doesn't mean you'll never be able to do it.
Yeah, no,
I when you brought up the word time, I think really that is just the key factor. Games are hard sometimes, but a lot of the times, all you have to do is invest time into the game and you'll get better. So if you just spend more and more time trying to get better at a game, eventually, usually, you'll get better. That's called practice.
yeah. No, I mean, what Punky was saying is like exactly right, right? It's like criticism without acknowledging the good side is actually called sabotage, and that is probably the truest uh word of advice here. Is like, you're essentially, what I tend to do at least, it's ended up sabotaging myself, and I
Mm.
assume I'm certainly not the only one in that kind of category, right?
I can think of plenty of people who I've seen do the same thing in real time.
And it's like you are sabotaging yourself to a point where like, even though the reality is, or the reality might be that you could actually do it, and you probably just at the grasp, it's so close to do it, it's like there's nothing, it's like one more try and you will get it, it's fine, don't worry about it, right?
Yes.
But it is this, I think, visceral reaction, and how people are, and how people consider problems solving, and how they deal with things, because video games is a form of entertainment, and they elicit a big amount of, like they're asking a lot out of you emotionally, right, and mentally, because they just there's a lot going on, right?
Hmm.
And because there's a lot going on, especially when you're playing with or against people, right? You always want to be in that position. Well, I want to be able to do my best with the people that I'm playing with, or even I want to be able to do my best or be better than my opponent. And that's why a lot of people attach their abilities to do things to their self-worth, which can be a rabbit hole.
Yeah. It can snowball really quickly if you keep criticizing yourself so harshly. One thing I had to learn to do when I started playing Guilty Gear Strive, because Guilty Gear Strive was my first fighting game and really the first game that I've taken this seriously in a while. I had to learn the hard way to just, if I make a mistake that costs me a game, you have to learn how to say it's fine. Just acknowledge what the mistake was so that you don't do it again in the future, hopefully, and then just say it's fine. You don't want to say, oh my god, why can I never do this input? I always fuck up this input right at the most critical moment in the game. If I did this input, I would have won, but now I died because I'm so bad. You never want to say shit like that. Ever, ever, ever. It is just a bad, like, rabbit hole that will snowball eventually into you transforming as a person, not even just as a player, as a person, into somebody who cannot just move on from little mistakes.
And yeah, Blinky was bringing up the fact like it might be a stretch, but it's probably because of society that has been, conditioned us to be this way, which in a sense is not wrong, right? Because we have been in this society that we live in is like they want result at the end of the day, right? It doesn't matter very much how you got there, and you want to be able to get there, like to just be there, not even to get there. And then because of that, it can be really damaging to people who try to pursue that to an extreme and forget themselves in the process of doing that. That's why it's like criticism is always, you know, there's always two sides, right? There is the things that you did well, and there's the things that you didn't do well. If people that do things like I do sometimes, more often than not, focus on the bad side and then forget the rest, well, you are essentially sabotaging yourself and you are limiting your growth in the future because it will demand you more mentally to be able to get past that sentiment and that feeling because it's not, I mean, it's never fun to just get beaten up and then just continue to be beaten up and somehow rising out of that. It is complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't succeed, yeah, as you were saying, if you don't succeed, when you fail. But I mean, that's why probably some people would rather play easier games, like games that are like
Yeah. You- It,
less
it,
hard on them.
if you find that like a certain game keeps getting you in a scenario where you're finding yourself losing and you're really just getting like depressed about your losses and you've tried and tried and tried and tried to cope with that and no matter what you can't seem to get out of that rut where like or get out of that like pitfall where you are depressed about losing, you maybe should just stop playing that game or play it with different people who maybe are closer to your skill level. Because you do not have to play with people who are way better than you to improve at a game. That is not something you need to do, and it's not something you should do either. Because what you're doing is you're raising this like you're raising, like, moving the goalpost so far away to a point where realistically it isn't going to be, like, it's almost not going to be possible for most people to even get there. It is far better to go little by little with people nearby your skill level and just taking things a little bit at a time when you want to improve. And that's not to say that, like, some people don't learn by surrounding themselves with people who are way stronger than them, because to be fair, that's kind of how I learned. But was it the best way for me to learn? I don't know. Probably not. It probably would have been better if I, like played with, like, way more with people who were closer to my skill level. It's just the kind of person I am is I can sit here and lose 50 matches in a row and still come out fine with a smile on my face. Not everybody can do that. I just am built different.
Mm.
And Winky is putting a lot here in the chat.
Yeah, no, Punky was talking about like the first thing that I wanted to touch on is like, especially in this society, right? There is this
Hello,
like
Ziggy.
this taste, sorry, of being proud of your accomplishments, right? You did something right, and you should be proud of it. There's nothing wrong, right? And it shouldn't be anything wrong about you saying, patting yourself on the back and accepting compliments of like saying you did well because you did. And there's nothing wrong about that. But I guess people have this like who have been, I don't want to say brainwashed, but like this is how society has been about, always be humble and, do not celebrate your victories. It's like, uh, no, you can be proud of whatever whatever happens to you. Um, and then yeah, after that, Pungi was talking about like the rabbit hole that even this can come up with against other people that do not, you know, share that sentiment with you, and it's like they want to take you down, quote unquote,
Yeah,
right?
man. If you're surrounded by people who are trying to take you down a peg for being proud of yourself for doing something right, fucking get new people to hang out with. That's called toxicity right there. Don't be afraid to celebrate your victories. Uh, like, if you should be popping off if you did something right and you're proud of yourself. Don't be afraid to be happy for that. That's the point of getting better, is once you are getting better and you see the change, you should be celebrating it. And if other people have a problem with that, fuck them. that that's just not cool.
Yeah, pretty much. Get a block against mix-up characters. We did good tonight. There you go. We did something.
Yeah.
But like even then, because like in another example that I've seen is like this rabbit hole that can create, especially in some communities. I remember at the beginning of Dark Souls, when Dark Souls like was really popular and popping off, and a lot of people were talking about Dark Souls 1. There
Mhm.
were I want to say tens at least of uh, of thing not things but like of threads on Reddit talking about this. I accomplished this and you didn't, therefore I'm better. And then you had the two extremes of like this issue that we're discussing, right? One, it's like the people that are like, oh, I'm just better than you because I finished the game by using only the most terrible weapon in the game, right? And then the people are like, and the people at the bottom at the other hand would say, yeah, but like, uh the game is the game is against me. It's cheating anyway. It doesn't matter. You're terrible for succeeding, and I'm better anyway. Cause catch me outside. How about that?
Yeah, Dark Souls especially is one of the most gatekeepy, like hard to see the good side of it fandoms ever. I mean, it's not hard to see the good side of it, but like it can be really gatekeepy. A lot of communities can be really gatekeepy, especially the fighting game community as well. Like, and by gatekeepy, I mean there's going to be a lot of people who are like there to play with you, but they're not going to support you. And especially they're going to be
No friends.
like
Ghost
it
missions.
they're the kind of people who when they lose, they're going to be saying shit like, damn, how am I losing to this person who just started playing the game for the first time? I can't believe this shit. There's no way I could possibly be losing because this person's a noob. The answer is they're just bad. And if you already are better than them, then damn. Just damn.
Ah, it's definitely like how to say that? Like yeah, that's what Punky was saying is like this like the Dark Souls community can be a lot of different things at once because a lot of people are playing the game and a lot of people are talking about it. It's like it can be between purist, get good mentality, and like also on the other extreme you have the people that are like really kind and try to help people, get past those like difficult barriers that they might
Yeah.
have, trying to have fun and enjoy the game.
Yeah, and the cool thing
It's
about Dark Souls is that it's baked into the game itself with the ability to invade other people's worlds and also the ability to come into another person's world as uh like a cooperator. You can choose essentially the light or the dark path, like Shadow the Hedgehog. Do you want to be evil? Do you want to be bad? Or do you want to be bad? Or do you want to be good? So don't get it mixed up when I say that it can be gatekeepy. Just because you want to invade somebody's world, that doesn't make you a gatekeeper. If you're playing Dark Souls and somebody comes into your world and invades you, and then kicks your ass, and then points down at the floor in front of you, and like spins around in circles and taunts you, does that mean that you're better than them at the game because you aren't like because you wouldn't stoop down to the level that they stoop down to of using a gesture? No, they were still better than you and you still lost. Like, you shouldn't have your feelings getting hurt because they pointed down at the floor. I do think
yeah,
it's rather interesting how the community of Dark Souls took this gesture and made it almost into like an insulting thing, even though it's just a function in the game that is supposed to be used on messages to indicate where players should go to collect items or to progress. It was essentially transformed by the community to be used to humiliate people for losing.
yeah, no, that's what Pinky was saying, right? It does come off at this like, self-imposed slash perceived humiliation at the
But
end.
what you should be doing as the person who lost in that situation, you shouldn't be offended by them trying to humiliate you. All you should do is be like, wow, okay, I just lost and got bodied by this person. How did I lose? How can I get better? Or if you're just there to have fun, then just laugh it off. Because by that same coin, you can summon cooperators in that game, and then the cooperators can take care of the invaders for you, or you can fight the invader 2-on-1. It's not like there's no way out of it. Yeah, like Twinkie said, don't dwell on it.
Yeah, don't dwell on it, but like the important bit that he was saying is like, uh, yes, it is okay to. I think it is like okay to feel offended or to feel like in general, it's okay to feel the way you feel no matter what is happening, right? No matter what is happening to you, whether you're in the game, whether you are, well, I guess in that instance, like when you're playing these games, it's okay to be frustrated sometimes. It's okay to be, to feel things happening. But what Punky said, and is like, you should not be dwelling on it, especially when you know whatever your objective might be afterwards, right? If your objective is something along the line of like, I want to get better, I want to beat that, sure, you might get moments where like you might be frustrated because you lost and you were so close. I was so close to winning, but then I lost at the last second. But it's fine as long as you can bounce back off of it. But that is the difficult bit that people like
Yeah.
forget
I
in that sense.
I think what I'm trying to say is it's better to have the mentality of the glass is half full rather than the glass is half empty. If
Mm.
anyone, oh, if I
Yeah,
mean
yeah.
Trickster, you know that analogy.
Mm.
The glass is half full, meaning in that scenario, it would be like, wow, I got so close. I did so good. I was so close. Next time I'll get him. But then the half empty analogy would be, damn it. If I had just not made this mistake, he would have died in that next interaction. How could I? You know, it's better, in my opinion, to have the former mentality there of the glass is half full. You really do want to look on the bright side as much as you can, because it, because you know, being on the latter part of that with the glass is half empty, it can be a slippery slope, where if you do that too much, it'll just become the default, which is a no-no. Because not only is that bad for you, um, usually people around you don't want to hear it either. It can start to like annoy people around you if all you do is complain when you lose. Like nobody wants to hear that every time. That's not to say you shouldn't complain when you lose, but if you're going to complain when you lose, maybe also like I don't know, ask questions to your opponent like of how to get better.
There is definitely like this. What Pinky was saying was like, it's definitely about self control at the end of the day, right? And yeah, sometimes a break might just be useful. Just take a break and take a breather. And I think what Pinky is saying is like, in a sense, what you're saying, this analogy of like, um, uh, talking about the glass being half full and half empty is like, it's a perspective essentially on how you could have done things, and essentially you want to try to better yourself in that regard, and having a more optimistic mindset will help you achieve that. But it's not to say, it's just like what he was talking about like criticism in general. There's the good and there's the bad, and you need to be able to have to acknowledge both. And there is a lot that are like, hey, I'm just going to look at one side of the equation and then forget the other, and you would have this weird mentality going on. No matter which extremes you go to, right? Both of them are bad in their own ways. It's always with moderation and self control that you will be able to go past whatever you might be stuck in. But yeah, at the end of the day, what to go back to what you were just saying, um, when you play with somebody, you're not really responsible for their mental health or what they might feel at the moment. You don't know that, right? We play with what we have given. And essentially, at this point, it just becomes a question of like either etiquette that you could say, as like, well, it's not very nice to just, I beat you in a game, and then you know, you will berate me for me beating you, right? If you are not good enough to be able to beat me in said video game, it's not about um I mean, berating me is just trying to, how to say that, chase away the problem and try to put the problem somewhere else, which is essentially what I wanted to go forward towards, is like the moment where, like, because right now with what we've been talking is only about oneself, right? How people in and of themselves like process things.
Hmm.
But then it is also about like the other person, right? Because in general,
Yes.
whether you are playing in a team-based game like League of Legends, Call of Duty, or whatever, or CS:GO, anything really, or whether you are against your opponent, right? There is there's still like this interaction going on. Rather, whether it is your teammates or your opponents, you can go very overboard and haywire in both sense. Just like you can do that to yourself and impose self critique or self not it's not deprivation, it's like deprecation. You
Yes.
can also do that to your opponent and your teammates. It's like, oh, we lost because of you, because you did wrong, etc., etc. We uh I lost because my enemy did this stuff that is like broken, or it's like nonsense,
I
and even
mean,
sometimes just yelling at the game, really.
I personally
This
think it's just super annoying to sit here and listen to people complaining about a game constantly, nonstop, and oh my god, it is so common with people playing like team-based games. Any team-based game where people are just complaining about why I can't believe it. We would have won if I wasn't carrying. All of you guys are just bottom fragging. And, I'm being nice with the way I'm describing how people talk about this because there's usually like a curse word every other 5 seconds and like, if you're lucky, a few racial slurs in there to mix in the pot. Like it gets really bad. It gets really, really, really bad and it's super, super, super awful to listen to. Nobody wants to hear it. And you're just making yourself look like a pile of shit while doing it.
And yeah, it's exactly what Pinky is saying. Is like it's kind of disheartening how many times you hear these things, right? Of like you ridiculing your teammates for things that happen to a point where you're like putting them down, right?
Yeah. You,
Especially when you have this common goal of like, you want to succeed, right?
yeah.
They they don't want to lose just like you don't want to lose.
Yeah,
So
no, you're on a team, right? So what you want to do is try to uplift your teammates rather than, stomping them into the ground for every little mistake they make.
yeah, it's like, bro,
And
yeah,
again,
they're trying their best.
on the subject of the other team and the other players who are your opponents, it's the same thing there. You don't want to be like really like super berating them either. Friendly banter is fine. You want to like get a little playful, throw a little playful shit talk in there, but like usually people are actually like coming after people like for real, like I'll find where you live, like type shit. It's scary. It can get scary sometimes. Like even in like we were talking about earlier, like in tournament settings, there have been instances where people get beat up for winning. It's awful.
Yeah, it is. It is. It can be
Like
again. This kind of stuff can be really bad,
like
really fast.
control yourself, people. Actually control yourself. If you're getting to the point where you want to beat somebody up because you lost, brother, just stop playing. Just play. I don't know. Just freaking do get puzzles from Barnes and Noble and make those for a living. Maybe you shouldn't be playing competitive games if that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, it's definitely like I won't say complicated, but like it's there is too many examples of that. This is essentially what I want to say is like there is a lot of instances where we have this competitive mindset that goes too far to a point where you're willing to hurt someone um before you're just willing to hurt them essentially. Like no matter who this is, your opponent, your ally. I wonder if games appeal to more or less emotionally developed demographic. I don't know. Them just adult kids. Yeah, it's complicated to say. I don't really think that like games just appeal to a less emotionally developed demographics. I do think on the other hand that like it's we as people, some of them just do not have that. And I think in general, people did not expect video game to be like a form of art. And the fact that it can, just like when you look at a photo, it can elicit emotions and really strong feelings towards things. Uh, uh, and because it can, you know, elicit a lot of like very strong feelings towards many different subjects, right? It is fairly complicated to, you know, whenever someone is playing a game that is not very much like emotionally ready to handle certain things, they will end up lashing out a lot and being able doing things like I don't need to tell you or anybody here really. There's enough compilation of rage toxic people on YouTube uh, to fill 60 time hour podcast, you know, of people being angry, breaking controllers, breaking mouses, and like even throwing shit at people.
Yeah. And you know what? It's like it's not even like in multiplayer games because earlier we were talking about Dark Souls. There are people who will get that angry just playing a single player game. Like there's plenty of examples of people playing like rhythm games and then like jamming their keyboard through their monitor because they failed too many times on like one map. Like who hurt you? Who hurt you?
Yeah, but like it's what Spunky is saying is like sometimes people never had they are not emotionally ready to handle these things. And because they aren't emotionally ready to do so, they just devolve into kid behavior. Yeah, exactly.
I do think
Like
it's like there is some sort of mindset that you might hang around people who promote the mentality of there is no such thing as it's just a game, and therefore people who hang around those kinds of people will also become that kind of person. mm, People can be like people can be nurtured into having that mindset as well. In which case it can be really hard to get out of that mindset. But what you got to do is you just got to try to surround yourself with people who don't have like bad mindsets like that. You know,
Yeah, but I
it
mean,
is okay to say sometimes that it is just a game.
it's just
Okay.
a game. You don't have to be mad.
Sometimes people don't have the luxury of that. Well, how do you not have the luxury to say it's just a game?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, but like,
Oh, you mean don't have the luxury of having people to tell you that it's okay. Got it.
yeah, you ain't lonely.
You're
I'm
not
here.
lonely.
Come.
You could come in our server anytime. You gotta come in our server and then you won't be lonely anymore.
Well, it's like it's what you call it. It's like it. It's not even just because of people that you're with. Sometimes people are like that because they're playing by themselves, and because I mean they're playing by themselves in front of a game, and they are unable to handle their own emotions. They are unable to handle what to do in certain instances, and they just devolve into this, you know, let me just stab whoever at this point,
Yeah.
like lashing out, whether it is to you, to they don't,
I
yeah,
mean,
would conform to whatever fit in. Yeah, tantrums are definitely like interesting.
it's really
Like
hard to get to the source of these kinds of issues because there's sometimes like mental health like factors that can contribute to it as well. Um, there's like could be a bit of a neurodivergence going on there sometimes as well. So y- when talking about a subject like this, it's hard to get a good answer if you're generalizing it too much. Um, like
yeah,
like
but
for example, there are some people who have like I don't know, like ADHD or like like some sort of neuro neurological thing that makes them focus really hard onto something, and if you're really hyper focused onto something, it can be really easy for that person in particular to go off the rails when they lose, thinking that they are the worst person on the planet because they can't win at a video game. Where for someone else, it might be way easier to just say, hey, it's just a game, I'll get him next time.
yeah, but I mean, you don't even need to go that far. It's what speaking talking about. Sometimes it's just because it could be because of how you were being raised, and that's it. You haven't learned how to properly scratch, as Punky is describing it, like that brain itch, right? You don't know how to deal with it. And then, therefore, you just devolve into the only thing you know how to do is have kid behavior.
Well, the best thing I can come up with as a solution is for me when I was having that issue with Guilty Gears, like I already said, is literally what I say is it's fine. Like
Yeah, but like,
you can fight
you
me.
learn that.
Yeah, I know. I learned it. It's not something I started with. But if you fight me and we're in a VC together and you do something that like thwarted my plans of victory and you hear me out loud say it's fine, that is me in real time telling myself it is just a game. That is my version of telling myself it is just a game. And
Yeah,
that's like my tick that helps me, contain the beast. You got to keep a leash on it. Your go-to
Yeah,
phrase
when
is to say, "Oh well." Yeah, doesn't have to be "It's fine." You could just like say like, "Oh well," or "We'll get him next time."
my go-to phrase is help. I'm dying and I'm terrible at the video game.
Ah.
Pretty much that is how I will react. That is about it. But that's the point, right? It's like the thing is we all have our little ways to deal with those kind of issues, but like it's still because all the people that are there, we are much emotionally mature enough to understand that like this is how we are trying to deal with it. But it is something that still you have to learn either through, your parents doing their job and teaching you this emotional material maturity to like, I have a problem. What do I need to do to solve it? Right? What do
Yeah,
I need to do to process
yeah.
these negative
I,
emotions and do something about it,
I
right?
think the interesting thing about me is I grew up with like a really nice mom. Mom, if you're watching this, shout out to you. You're a homie. So like I didn't really have any issues growing up, but even still coming into Guilty Gear, it was not a skill that I had being able to tell myself that it's fine. The way I actually learned that was I think I was watching a YouTube video, and I don't remember whose video it was, but like I basically just stole my tick from someone else who described the same thing, where they learned to tell themselves it's just fine. And I was like, huh, I should start doing that. And lo and behold, it actually helped me personally a lot. So, it could be good for you if you're struggling like with a certain game, you could even look online, like on YouTube, listen to videos of other people talking about the game and their experiences with it. You might find somebody out there who's going through the same things you're going through with, and maybe they've already gotten to the brighter side of that, and you can learn from their experiences too. And you could even ask, like, if you do play with friends, you could ask your friends about their own experiences emotionally playing games and how they handle certain things.
It's like a lot of different people have a lot of different answers to different things. It's very everybody I think have their own way of dealing with things and doing things around it's not even video games at this point because like we're just talking about like the question is how do you deal with negative emotions. That's like something bad happened to you, right? Especially like in video games, it can be Artorias just slap you in the face because he did the triple salto pirouette 3 times and like put his sword on top of your forehead and you died. And it's like, well, how do I deal with the frustrating feeling of like I got beaten by the triple salto pirouette for the seventh time now, right? Do do I just break my controller and just cry out loud and then like wake up the neighbors, right? Or how do you try to I don't want to say combat it, but like understand those feelings and then deal with it to go into further improvement for yourself, right?
Yeah.
That is essentially like what is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like how people process things as Pungi was mentioning is there is a lot of you know of things going through with that, right? How do you deal with it can tell a lot about the person and how they process things.
Yeah. You you can learn a lot about a person just by playing a game with them.
Yeah, so when I play fighting game with people I tend to because fighting games especially are not like team based, you can't rely on anybody but yourself. You can see a lot of the person as you play with them because they are essentially
Yeah.
putting their true self through that game.
And I think the great thing about games in general is that you can meet a lot of your like longtime friends by just playing games online and meeting them in the game and then playing the game with them or against them. Like throughout my whole life, a lot of my best friends who I've met playing games and just having like getting match made against them. And then, maybe sometimes I had so much fun playing the game with that person that like I don't know, maybe I added them to my party and then we both went and played as a team in like Overwatch or like Call of Duty, for example, or something like that. But for me, like when I started playing Guilty Gear Strive, I didn't even know who Trickster was before I started playing Guilty Gear Strive. In this day and age, there's Discord servers for everything. When Guilty Gear Strive came out, I had a friend who told me there's this server you can join if you want to find people to play Guilty Gear Strive with that I'm in. And then he invited me, and then that was Trickster's server. So I joined that server, and then that is where I met Trickster and my friend Haru, and I met Winky and Ziggy, basically like all my friends who I learned how to play Guilty Gear with. And Guilty Gear's been out for like like 3 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and all these people who I just mentioned and more who I haven't mentioned, they're all still my friends, and I still hang out with them every day because Guilty Gear is super fun, and they all taught me how to play it. Like, games are actually a surprisingly healthy thing when it comes to social life. uh, if you all you got to do is have a positive attitude.
No, I think people tend to forget that like despite distances and things like this, games are a surprising they are surprisingly good at like making, real social bonds, right? Like social bonds that is like, you know, even if, we don't have that, it's complicated because obviously nobody is like super rich or whatever,
Hmm.
right?
Thanks for the raid,
It's
Goofy Blue Goober. Welcome.
hello,
Shout out
welcome
to
to the
Goofy
stream,
Blue Goober. Go give him a follow. Thank you for the raid.
the stream. Great. Well, yeah.
You can keep talking. Sorry.
Like I was saying that like yeah, but like what I was saying is like we tend to forget that video games are a great source of like social interaction and having not just social interaction but deep and meaningful social interaction, right? And you can realistically make long lasting friendships and make and go even beyond that, um simply because you share the same passions and the same interest. It's like this is not just like something that like your parents and our boomer parents will say, they don't exist because they are inside this metal box. They do exist and they are people, right? And you do that's the beauty of video games, right?
Yeah.
But that's why I do understand, despite everything, people that are so emotionally invested and this becoming very emotionally charged whenever they play video games because this is that important. That's why I said, that's why sometimes when I hear the phrase, it's only a game, not really. It is important. Like, it's not just a game. sometimes it is just the whole world for some people, and there's nothing wrong
Mm,
with that. It's probably healthy for them. It's not, sometimes it's not just a game, it's more than that, but it's the real root of the issue is more like, how do you deal with when something goes wrong, and that then and I can just affect your life in general, because like, if this is how you behave when you are doing that in a video game, how will that be when you actually have more problems, like if you become sick or something, if somebody in your life becomes sick, how do you deal with that? Because if you're unable to like control your emotions to be able to make the right decisions, well, there will be consequences.
yeah. You you really don't want to like in any situation explode emotionally. Having outbursts like that is never a good thing. Like even
It's
in a
like,
place like at work, like if you're at work and like for example, like maybe a customer is a little sassy with you that day and you decide to, you know, pop off on them, well guess what? Now you're probably gonna get fired, so see ya. Or you might just get written up. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But like unfortunately, you can't just you can't just have an outrage whenever you want.
you definitely can't. It's like it is so difficult, right? Your action do have consequences, and no matter the setting where you are, video games will still be a medium where it is emotionally charged. It is, a lot of emotions are at play whenever you are playing video games. And yeah, there's no saves coming. You cannot save state and just start again, right?
Yeah.
What what you're about to do will just be there, and that's it.
Yeah. There's no rewinding time.
There's definitely no rewinding time. So it's like this emotionally charged medium that is video games. They can, between, because we've been talking about, a lot of the bad feelings and things that can happen between anger, toxicity, to the point where like it can even go to violence.
Yeah. Dude, yeah.
Uh, all this stuff is like, it is something that can happen,
You know,
right?
it if you find that, sometimes you do need to vent, that's also okay. You know, venting is something that's important. And even if you get to the point where you need a therapist and you get a therapist, you know what your therapist is probably going to ask you to do? They're probably going to ask you to vent. Because venting is something that people need to do and do. Something I do every now and again. I know that for sure. It's something Trickster does every now and again, albeit it's a little bit more rare for him to vent. Um, Everyone's different. Like, I can go on and on about like how I struggle with the game I play. Like, things just get more and more complicated the more I play, the more I learn, the harder it seems to get. Blah 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 blah. But like emotions are good, and venting is a good way to let your emotions go free for a bit. Like it's not healthy at all for you to keep everything bottled up inside. And I know I've been like really advocating for, you know, doing that. But obviously, you can't do it forever. Um, so every now and again, you might want to vent a little bit, but and that's fine. And a lot of there are even some people who will cope with losing by turning it into a bit of a comedy routine. Like it could even be like some people get add a little bit of self-deprecation in there. It's like, haha, I'm so bad. Lol, insert joke here. Um, Many people have different ways of coping with that. Like, there are even people who make careers out of it. Like, a great example is like fucking Aaron Hansen on Game Grumps. Sometimes he plays games and then he's bad at the games, and it's like, ha ha ha, funny, I'm bad at the game. Very funny. You know, Aside from that being his job, it could be a way of coping for him at not being perfect at the game. Um,
It's like it's okay, right?
yeah,
It's okay in general to just, emotions are important to have. It's fine. And like just like Winky says, it's like it's essentially how do you regulate them? And that is the real questions here. How do you regulate those emotions and don't let them, take over? And also don't let them, you know, uh, hurt people around you as well. Because that's essentially what's happening a lot. There's like, the toxicity can, make you say things that you might not think at the moment, but you scratch your little brain itch, right? You scratch it, but it is still like fairly bad for you to do so,
yeah,
right? Because you don't know how to regulate those emotions, because you don't know how to be mature enough for you to do things, these behavior that you essentially expose.
yeah. And I think now would be a good time to ask for some input from you all you viewers who are here. Hello, everyone, by the way. Um, what uh opinions do you guys have on this matter? Like, just mental and video games in general. How do they make you feel? How do you deal with your wins and your losses? Just chat about it in there, and we'll read all your responses, and we can all talk about it.
Thing is, just
Um,
in general, people tend to forget how the good, like, because we talked about at length about like how bad it can be, and like, I
yeah,
guess where like at the beginning of it all is like some of these emotionally charged reaction can be a little, I don't want to say, I guess the word I want to use like automatic, right? It's just like a reflex. It's like something happened and then you do it without even thinking about
yeah.
it anymore.
I mean, I do
And
think we
because of
should talk more about like the other side of like when stuff when good stuff happens.
we need to submit a report to God and demand a refund. Poorly balanced game. That is so real, actually. Actually, I didn't even want to play the game, but here I am. Jesus, it's crazy.
Yeah, so
But it's like in general, right? Video games also give a lot to people. A lot that people forget about. Things along the line of hey, I you can sharpen your competitive spirit, right? And and the fact that this is important to you to have healthy competition, because essentially this is one of the greatest way to like, be better at things and be better in general, sharpen your competitive spirit, and essentially all the good things that video games just give you in general. a way to distress in a safe environment, friends and the social life that is associated with it. You have these like the what we talked about earlier is like these these what you call it, these relationships that you have with people, right, around video games.
Mm-hmm.
And all the scientific papers that have been coming out these recent years, because people have been villainizing video games and trying to put them into the source of, all the woes of our generations and the generations that's coming after us, of like, oh, video games make people violent. Video games are like, wow, it's because of people playing Call of Duty that like America has so many school shootings and whatever, which is nonsense, because video games have been proven time and time again to be one of those rare mediums that are like uh, that help you more than anything else,
Yeah.
just like everything else.
It,
Well,
I
with
think I think
moderation.
more than like video games aren't a negative thing, like you said. I think it's more of like it gives you kind of like an escape from reality. They're a hobby, you know. If anything, if you were struggling in real life with some situation completely unrelated to video games, then video games would be like your safe space. 9 times out of 10. Like,
Little did he know that video games are part of reality.
yeah.
Dun dun dun. Got him.
I I know like video games are a hobby to me, and they're not making me want to go do crime. Lol. If video
Cannot
games make
escape
you want to do
reality.
crime, please contact help.
Well, that's for real, for real. It probably has a lot of similarity with sportsmanship. It has, yeah, a lot of similar like that competitive spirit I was talking about earlier. It has a lot of like it's very close to call it um sportsmanship, right? Is like acknowledge that it was a good game, acknowledge that like it helps you acknowledge that like, well, I had fun even if I lost, even if I I didn't, I just had a great game. I gave my all, and that's what matters. I had the opportunity to give my all, and it's just like after a good session, like at the gym or something. It's like I really gave my all. It felt great, and now I can, lay down and rest well, right?
Yeah. And I think something that I struggle with and something that a lot of people struggle with is being able to take a break. Because sometimes you're having so much fun with a game that you don't want to take a break. Even if you are getting like your ass beat and you're feeling down on yourself, it can feel like you don't want to stop anyway. It's like some sort of weird like Stockholm syndrome-esque thing where it's like, man, I'm getting my ass beat here over and over again, and damn, I'm bad. But man, I don't want to stop playing this game. I'm having so much fun anyway. But then your friend who was beating your ass, they're like, oh, I have to go eat, and then I'm gonna go sleep. I'll see you tomorrow. But you still haven't had you feel incomplete where it's like, oh man, well, I guess I just got my ass beat and I wasn't able to win, and I don't want to stop playing until I get that validation, but now I can't have it for today. And for a lot of people, it can go as far as like, oh, well, this is the rest of my day now. It can be hard to move on from something like that. Um, because it's happened to me before, for sure. Uh, but really what you have to learn to do is like just accept that it's like, okay, I guess I'll just take a break now and do something else. Like maybe you should go make food and relax, maybe read a book, watch a YouTube video or something, or even just fight somebody else, play with somebody else. You don't even have to stop playing the game. You could just play with somebody else. You have to find something to fill that void that you feel when you don't get the validation you're looking for playing your game. And by validation, that could mean like, I want to win. When I win, I'll feel validated. Or I want to hit this combo I've been practicing really bad. Or, I want to win a first to 5, a first to 10.
Well, there's that. What Punky the lopside that Punky is bringing up is also very true. Because like, well, what you were talking about, like the entire like self-control, is essentially how to set boundaries with yourself, right? But there's nothing bad about you trying to. It's like, I mean, at some point you will have to take that break, but there's nothing wrong about you trying your hardest as long as you're doing it in a healthy way and in a healthy manner, right? Just like what we talked about all before already about like um being able to self-diagnose and criticize and be humble with yourself. If you're able to do that and take the right steps to accomplish that goal, well, there's nothing wrong. It's essentially uh, having self-control and developing that. I have a good amount of self-control, and I can say to myself, well, if I want to be better, I need to practice this and that, and put the time and energy into the right thing. But that's what I was talking about. Like this whole good things about these video games, they teach you this, right? Playing with other people, you know, obviously not the toxic ones,
Yeah.
will teach you slowly how to be that way. Like all these things that video games do for us and as a medium of entertainment, they help us improve ourselves, which is great. And I think people tend to forget about it, and we are always like we were talking about like, oh, video games can like. It's not necessarily they can, but it's mostly the individual and how they react to the video game. They can be this rabbit hole of, bad stuff that is happening. Everybody is, in fact, there's also an interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Everybody is built different. Like, it does make me smile a lot, like seeing players. Like, if you ever watch like a tournament and fight with fighting games, like I know way like a long time ago there was Red Bull Kumite, I think. I don't remember exactly how they spelled that. It was like a Red Bull Guilty Gear Strive tournament where at the grand finals it was Gobo versus Diaphone. And man, Gobo is a character. Like an actual the way he expressed himself at that tournament, not even just in game, but like on his face, because there was face cam for the fights, was honestly so hilarious. He was really, 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 really selling himself and getting like his personality out there. Like the way he smiles and looks at the camera with a face that just says, "Yes, I am the protagonist here." It's very infectious. There, he's a very good example of somebody who is Gobo is a very good example of somebody who is not only very good at the game, but they are also like they also have a very clean mental and like they are super. They just have a super cool like personality when it comes, and like a very. They're just very cool to watch play. Like it's honestly art watching that guy play. Was that a little too random?
No, 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 no. But it's no, I had something else coming up. It's weird. I think somebody is at middle for some reason, but
Okay,
I'll see
I'll
that.
try to
But
I'll try to carry while you're gone.
no, I mean I'm still there for now. But yeah, it's like it's it's strange that like you can see it's it's in those kinds of like situations where you can see people and how they when they are like they can master their emotions and I mean being able to have this not just self-confidence but self-control is like they can just be themselves and be fun around other people.
Yeah, it. There's so many players like where you just have to wonder like how do they get that yin yang balance of like emotions to being logical when they play the game. Because I know like I'm definitely way more on the emotional side still, which I feel like if if I had to describe myself, I'm more like on the emotional side. I'm too much on the emotional side. Like it could be holding me back when it comes to how good am I at the game. It would probably be better for me if I was a little bit more logical when it come to like my plays, and like what moves I'm making when I'm playing Guilty Gear. For example, it essentially like what I'm trying to say is like I sorry, I struggle to find ways to like exercise my brain to be more like thinking the right things during the match. But that's kind of like why I look up to you a bit, Tricksters, because I think you are better at doing that in particular than I am. So I always am asking you for advice on that subject in particular. Is like just getting all of the fog out of the way and worrying about what is important right now during the match. Um,
I think it's just life in particular because sometimes you have to worry about what is important rather than not, right? It's like you need to be able to like just sit down and just you know use that self-control and like life is complicated and there's a lot that goes into it. Just like we can talk about like in this small spectrum of fighting games, it just resonates with everything else anyway. It's like it's focusing on what is actually important and what do you actually want that matters at the end of the day. And it's essentially you can just apply that there,
yeah,
right?
like my
And that helps making decisions
my
essentially.
my current thought process to get specific is like in Guilty Gear Strive. The way I play is right now. I have like a handful of strategies that I will cycle through while I'm playing, like during neutral, mainly during neutral. Like I'm right now, I'm particularly like super focused on neutral because that's where I want to improve. So I cycle through like being really aggressive or hanging back and trying to like react to things my opponent does. And at the same time, I'm trying to remember what is my opponent doing and what are their habits, i.e. a mental stack. Um, like mental stack meaning the what are like the last couple of things your opponent did in a certain situation. So like if my opponent did a sweep, I'm going to remember for next time that I'm in that situation, they're going to do a sweep. Like what I tend to do personally is I will remember the last thing they did and then assume they're going to do it next time. Is this going to work every single time? No. Definitely not. Which is what's interesting is like some people will go a step ahead, and instead of doing the thing they did last time, they will do the thing that is going to beat what you're going to do to beat the sweep. So if you want to beat the sweep by jumping over it and doing an aerial, there are some people out there who will wait for you to jump and then anti-air you because they know, or at least they're assuming, that you're going to try to adapt to the last thing they did. And that is the game of mental stack that is honestly, it can get really complex sometimes. Um, mainly the okay, not maybe not super complex, but like the most complex it can get is like that. Sometimes people will be thinking just one step at a time, and there are other people who are thinking two steps at a time. I'm definitely a one step at a time kind of person, but the hard part for me is realizing which kind of player my opponent is. Are they thinking one step at a time or two steps at a time? Or are they switching it up even? Could be the case as well. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be as complicated as that. Because there are some situations like where maybe your character just has an option that outright beats multiple options that your opponent could do, so it's just better to do that. Like I find myself in situations super often where I'm like caught up in this debate in my head of mental stack and what is my opponent going to do, where I don't realize that I could have just like I had 50 meter and I could have just supered the whole time. Like how many times has that happened to you probably, Trickster? Where it's like you're getting too caught up in the mental stack aspect of situations to realize you had a trump card there the whole time that you didn't even notice.
Yeah, no, I mean it definitely can happen. That is for sure. Of all this stuff, like you don't really like. Because I was reading real quick what Winky was saying, but essentially it was about like this what you call it, this all of this is a bit akin to language, quote unquote. It's like how do you answer to things? How can you do things? How can you do that, etc., etc., right?
Yeah. And like even if you were to ask a friend for help on this subject, you'd probably wind up sitting there for a really long time trying to get to one answer when really uh, it's super hard to get to just one answer.
It,
It
it, it
can
is
get it
difficult to
can
get.
get really complex.
It can get complex and deep really fast, and that's what Punky was talking about earlier. And it's like, is there patterns with people that lack confidence and self boundaries?
Yeah.
Um, I do think that people that lack confidence will go into two directions. Either they will try to do the exact same thing over and over until it works
Mhm. Mhm.
because they do not know what else to do, or they do not envision that there are other options possible
Mhm.
or other avenues that they could be exploring, or it is complete chaos without any thought,
Mm.
and it just devolves into, well, I just press all the buttons until uh, magically it will work, and if it does, I'm a superhero, and if it doesn't, I will just insult your mom and throw a rock at your window. It is one of the two.
Yeah.
I will go. Uh,
Okay, I'll talk for
What
a
is
bit.
sounds like? Yeah. I will be right back.
Yeah, so it, people who lack confidence often will try to make up for it by putting down others or getting people to try and pity them. Yeah, I think Poinky, I think that's like a super common thing that you see a lot. Um, especially I think the one that is like I think the one that is way more common is probably putting down others, but you can't really sleep on the second one because there is also so many people out there who do say things like, "Man, I'm so bad. I can't believe I couldn't take a single game off of you and I got 10 0'd." Just saying a bunch of things that would probably like it's like they're looking for pity, right? So but if you do have confidence, it is definitely a lot easier to lose gracefully without saying these kinds of things. And in order to get that confidence, you need to stop being indecisive, which is an issue that I have a lot. Like sometimes you just have to realize in games that there are situations where there is no possible way you will choose the right answer 100% of the time. There is some game of chance happening there. A lot of the times we like to call that RPS, which stands for rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors is a game of chance. There are plenty of times where you will just have to guess. And if you do not guess fast enough, well, you're going to lose. If you do guess fast enough, there's still a chance you're going to lose, but there's also going to be a chance that you're going to win. If you don't guess fast enough, there's no chance you're going to win. That, learning how to accept that is part of gaming. Particularly in PvP and like team PvP genres, mostly just PvP genres. Because there's a particularly like deep mind game when it comes to a lot of PvP games compared to like team games where it's like a bit more team oriented. In PvP games it's literally just you and your opponent. What so it's a direct RPS between you and your opponent rather than like an RPS between a team of 5 people versus another team of 5 people, which I'm not sure how that would work. That sounds like a whole different, like super uber complicated subject that I don't even know if I can touch upon during this podcast. But if anybody could enlighten me, do feel free to. Um, but
FPS
yeah,
be like.
yeah. But learning how to accept that sometimes you just have to gamble is a part of, you know, learning just how to play the game. And welcome back, Trickster.
Ooh. People who
Problem.
lack confidence often will try to make up for it by putting down others or getting people to pity them. I think there's that too. And what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
There's definitely like
I went over that while you were gone, but
mm,
you can keep talking about your response to it.
because like I do think it's essentially there is that too, where it's like they essentially like explore probably worth exploring. Yeah, after that, yeah, definitely worth exploring that. People who lack self-confidence often will try to make up for it by putting others down or make people pity them. And essentially, I think yeah, that is also true because it will happen more often than not that you know
Thank you for the follow, Dater.
all of data.
Welcome.
Welcome to stream. It will happen more often than not that like people will, instead of try to look into themselves what might have happened, they will put that aggression towards others. That is what we talked about earlier um about all this hey, I don't know how to process my emotion, therefore I'm just going to uh, cascade them towards my um my teammate or my opponent, one of the two,
Yeah.
right? And it's essentially, or even like the odd on and the other end, on the other extreme, and like wanting people to pity you and like make you become this invisible victim, quote unquote, the one that doesn't exist, that brain itch. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always a short-term solution.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff.
It's like a weird way of trying to look for other people to give you the excuse for why you lost. Which can be bad. What you want to do instead is find out why you lost, um, by just, it's like it's like you take a more direct route to finding out why you lost rather than taking the indirect route of saying, I can't believe I lost a 10-0 to you because I'm so bad, and then say a bunch of negative things about yourself until the people around you finally decide they don't want to hear it anymore and try to console you. Because that is a little like annoying, for sure, and it's definitely not going to help your confidence either. To get into the topic of how people fall into the pit of low confidence, and I think earlier when I was mentioning like not being able to gamble in certain situations and accept that there's RPS in games is a way that I personally have like struggled when it comes to self-confidence, because sometimes it really does feel like you're trying to find like an answer to everything possible at the same times, even when it's not possible at all to have an answer for everything every single time. um you need to understand like that you won't be able to have an answer for everything every single time, and that's just called being human. Nobody's perfect. There is a thing called chance, and it's present in pretty much every game. there
It is. It
there
is.
there's too
Yeah,
many
it is
there's too many
everywhere.
factors for you to keep track of, like for you to be able to have an answer for everything. And
Definitely.
that's a really easy way to lose self-confidence, is by falling into that pitfall of um just feeling bad because you didn't have like feeling bad because you messed up like once. If you think that way too often, it can be really easy to mess up just once and then spiral down into like a snowball effect of, wow, I'm just making more and more wrong decisions. I can't believe I'm so bad.
Yeah, exactly what Pungi is saying. Thinking is your fault, quote unquote,
Yeah.
essentially.
When sometimes there really wasn't anything you could have done better.
It's like I'm not a psychologist or whatever, but I think low confidence at anything can like trace back to like a lot of things. Like a lot of things could have happened where you end up into this situation where you play a game and you downplay yourself, right?
Yeah.
Downplay your abilities and downplay your capabilities and the things that you can do, right? If given the right circumstances and given the right place to express yourself. But I'm definitely one of those people where like I have very, very low self confidence. I would never believe in my own capabilities to be able to do things, despite the fact that I can easily prove otherwise without having to think about it too much. And it's those kind of things that I still need to work on somehow.
Yeah.
And well, you end up in the whoop, about to break things. And you end up in this weird, I want to say, conundrum of trying to do the things that you want to do. And while you're trying to do the things that you want to do, you fall into these different pitfalls that we already outlined before. All the places where you don't trust yourself and you over criticize yourself and you would rather say that you're responsible and therefore just downplay, not downplay, but I guess the opposite, overplay, I
Yeah.
suppose, the entire situation.
I, I guess it is interesting to it's really easy to say that if you lost, it is your fault, um, or if you lost, the opponent was just better. But it really isn't as simple as that. Pretty much all the time, like there's gonna be plenty of situations where you lost due to chance, and RNG isn't something that can be like no one can be at fault for that. Like, so that's just one example. And then there's like the thing that Dater mentioned with like confidence seems like it could stem from keeping promises to yourself. Um, which is like the way I interpret that is like setting goals and then not being able to achieve those goals can, get people down in the dumps. Like if you spent all day, like, or like you spent hours on end during a day playing like a game, and you wanted to like beat another player, but you weren't able to really beat them, or you weren't able to accomplish that goal, you could start to lose faith in yourself and not be super motivated to keep going anymore. Um, but it's like we were talking about earlier. You have to find some way to cope with that, like whether it's something you say out loud or something you think to yourself inside, or going and practicing more and then coming back, or literally just taking a break and then coming back later. Um, because sitting there and you know feeling depressed because you didn't reach your goals yet isn't, you know it's not like your goals are going anywhere. They're still there and you can still get there. It's just going to take time. um
It is like giving yourself this, like, is, yeah, it's what Pink is saying, like needing to find ways to saying that like you can do it, and you can do that, and you can build that confidence in your abilities and confidence in yourself. And that's what, you know video games do that pretty well. It's like you succeed at the video games, hell yeah, I did it with my own abilities, right? I managed to go over this, this place where I was stuck, or this place where I was not comfortable before, but now it's better, right? This slowly but surely, but it's about like giving yourself the time to do so. But as we talked about before already, it is more difficult than that, and sometimes people have a lot of unhealthy ways to deal with things that they need to get around first before anything else.
yeah, i I also agree with that, and that like, sometimes you will just have to ask for help or search for help. Like, you won't be able to do it on your own all the time. I like there's nothing wrong with asking for help as well.
I think it's something that people forget about. Is like there's it's nothing. It's okay to just say I can't do it by
Yeah.
myself. And
And
like no
it's
matter what you do in life, really.
there's even like people who don't want to ask for help because they're too prideful or egotistical of themselves to to stoop down to the level, quote unquote, of asking someone else for guidance. I there are people who literally do that, who they will not allow themselves to have help from other people, which is, I think personally, to a certain extent, I think that's kind of a toxic mentality. I mean,
It
it doesn't have to be toxic. I'm not saying it has to be toxic every time. I understand wanting to figure out things for yourself. But if it's starting to become like a recurring thing where you've been looking to the for the answer for something for the past week and people have been telling you the entire time, bruh, we could just help you, and every single time you said no, but you're still here looking for the answer, maybe it's time to actually let them help you.
I mean it's even what Pinky said. I mean some people can go even like they will not watch a guide or something. Yeah, it's just bad game design, Lamau. Like exactly. Like they come into that answer was like it might not be that. It's just you are refusing so much and you're so dead in your ways that you will refuse to get the help to get past something. I don't want to watch a guide. I don't want to watch a walkthrough. I will figure it out to a point where like it's just like you end up when you are in this kind of rabbit hole, you develop this like very unhealthy mindset of hey, it is terrible. Therefore,
Therefore, the game isn't balanced.
yeah, therefore the game is, therefore is your fault, therefore is the fault of the opponent, therefore is my teammates, etc., etc.
Yeah. I mean,
You know, we're not pretending that like some games of like some games are fairly complicated. Sometimes the game design is bad. It
mm,
is terrible to a point where like you might need guidance to actually go anywhere,
yeah.
which is still the fault of the game, but that's
The
not the point of this conversation, I suppose.
yeah.
Imagine the game wasn't tragically bad, I suppose.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad game. I mean, that is just the case like for a lot of older games. Um, older generations of people who played games didn't have a way to just make a guide appear. You know what I mean? Um, like a great example is older fighting games. Back in the day, you couldn't just go to Dustloop and figure out what the optimal combos were for your character. You had to sit there and find them out, or like ask in your local group of players for advice on the subject. But yeah, um, not that just saying, not to get off topic.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean it's a bit both. Sometimes it might be like especially like in the older times where like they were selling magazines with the solution for certain things and like well unless you happen to have that magazine, well it was rather complicated. Especially you are a 7-year-old trying to decipher uh Zelda Majora's Mask and God knows that game was like not made for a 7-year-old to just go through and then it will be fine. That game was like fairly difficult and like there was a lot of stuff happening
I mean,
where like
wouldn't it all be easier if the game had a tutorial for everything built into the game that just told you everything in the game without you needing guidance from anything else.
I mean,
Or
it would be.
some sort of indirect way of teaching you things, like there's plenty of examples of that like it's like, putting a hole in the floor, you fall in the hole, fall in the hole, and then like, it's like, oh, well, I guess I will have to get over the hole somehow. Oh, look, there's a spring on the floor. When you walk towards the hole, you step on the spring, and the spring automatically is putting you over the hole without you having to do anything but walk forward. Now you know that you can go over the hole by stepping on the spring. Congratulations.
Yeah,
That
no,
is, and
I
that
mean,
is an example of indirectly teaching you how springs work. That's so like if you want to if you mean good game design by games teaching players indirectly the functions of the game in clever little ways like that, yes, that is pretty good game design. But how is every game going to be able to do that? Is what is my question. Because coming back to fighting games, how do you do that in a fighting game? How?
yeah, there's a lot, right? And I mean, that could be a discussion on its own, like how game design made, and like there's a lot and that can go wrong, and that can be going on in like game design in general.
Yeah. Like, I don't think for many games that there is a way to teach the player the game other than telling them what to do. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, you
So
know,
I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with a game having a guide or something that you'll have to read in order to understand. I think that's kind of like a little bit of a slippery slope of a mentality, saying that just because something requires you to read a tutorial, that the game design is now bad because it couldn't teach you any way else.
yeah, no, sometimes it is required, and I mean, there's to me at least, there is nothing wrong with that. It is like it's okay at this point to have something that is like that. And at the end, it's like essentially how they do it. And I mean, there is like just like there is good ways of doing things, there is definitely like terrible ways of people that have had like terrible impact in their games and making the game
Yeah,
terrible simply
and
because they don't know how to explain things properly, or not just how to like explain
yeah,
things. It's
it
like,
and I mean, like, that's a good. This isn't necessarily off topic, because what we're getting into right now is just the differences in how certain people interpret games. Like Puinky, for example, would rather skip the tutorial and just learn by losing and
yeah,
trial and error.
it's like there's nothing wrong
Yeah,
with it. Like both
that's
method
that's
works, but
just that's just one example of a way that somebody would learn a game.
I do think like they should be like half and half type situations. And it's like it's not only you need to sit through like hours of tutorial, because obviously like slogging through a tutorial where you need to like, especially when they do these kind of tutorial where like it interrupts your gameplay, and you need to like, oh, you start like running in like grinding a rail or going out on the slope or something, and you're like, oh, let me like stop you and like pull a wall of text in front of your eyes, and look at that. It's very interesting information. I didn't care. Rather than, more organically giving you that same information, it's essentially like just a question of like how do you give that information to the player.
Yeah,
In some instances, just like you said, it is required to give you an actual tutorial that you actually need to read. Games like um, I'm thinking about like D&D, for example, is absolutely one of those games where it's like Going in blind and then not knowing what D&D does can rapidly kill you. You
I
will need some form of, let me read a little bit about
I
this,
I
right?
do think like there you do need to strike a balance because literally yesterday I was playing Valheim, and in Valheim there's this bird. I hate the bird because it follows you around and tells you literally everything, like to the every last detail, and it doesn't go away until you interact with it. That bird is just constantly following you until you walk up to it and press E. It is still there. This is basically Navi from Ocarina of Time, but in Valheim. Yes, literally, hey, listen. What I think is this. In Valheim, you can also look at an item and then text will come up on the screen that says what the item is. All you really have to do is tell the player the controls. Once you know what the interact button is and how to get to the crafting menu, I'm pretty sure the bird becomes useless and most players would be able to figure out how do I pick stuff up and how do I craft with this stuff quite easily. I do not need this stupid ass bird following me around all the time to tell me how to pick up a stick and a rock off the ground and then press tab and go craft a hammer with the craft button that is in big bold text with a big button overlay on top of it that says craft right there in front of my face. Thank you, bird, for telling me this. I already did it. Thank you. It definitely can get annoying, and Valheim is a good example where like it was one of those things where they could have just made the bird not there and put all of the help in like an optional menu in the pause menu, which is also a thing that's also a thing that they did, which is great. So they did the right thing, but then they also did the wrong thing by making the bird exist. But yeah, now that I'm done venting about that, anything else you have to say, Trickster?
I mean, it is just like, you know, yeah. Well, essentially what Punky is saying is like what both of you are saying really is like tutorials can be non-intrusive and can definitely be done in a way where it teaches you things and like in a non, oh, let me just pull a wall of text in front of your face and just figure it out, right? Especially when games happens to be really complex and there's a lot of mechanics at play, or even the fact that like those mechanics might be like in the worst place possible.
Hmm.
It's like there is a lot about like um, uh, a lot that you could be saying about how games gives you information about things and how games give you like
The tools
yeah
necessary to play it.
the tools necessary to play and the tools necessary to do the things that the games want you to do. It's just like there is nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
But um you kind of need to, you kind of need to I don't want to say be lucky, but I do want to say be, you know, it is the developer's job at the end of the day. That's about it. Like they need to do their job properly and
Hmm.
bird noses across someone.
So all in all, like with this tilt and mental subject that we've come up with for this episode of the podcast, do you think there's anything that we've missed, Trickster, or anybody in the chat? Do you think there's anything that we haven't talked about yet that we should maybe shed some light upon before we start wrapping it up here?
Uh, I don't really know because like at the end I think it's like at the end of the day, I think like video games are like something that you can use to express yourself, and there's quite a lot like not you can express yourself with, but like you had it is emotionally charged, and so because of that, you can have a lot of different emotional responses.
Yeah.
We talked at length about,
Well, because video games are supposed to be fun, so there's one emotion already.
yeah, pretty much. So like there's a lot of things to consider and a lot of things to like, you know, a lot of things can happen. I want to say. Yeah, and I mean fun is
Yeah.
subjective, but
Yeah, fun is
that's
subjective, but I think we
that's an
can all
emotion, right?
objectively say that a video game should be fun.
Exactly.
If a video game was designed to not be fun, I guess you could be somehow having fun with it anyway, by being what we like to call a masochist. Yes, exactly.
You
Which
wouldn't check a
that's how you
masochist.
get games like Cat Mario or like Kaizo Mario, um, where
Getting over it.
games, yeah, getting over it, like where games start to become so challenging and difficult to the player to the point where it's like it's no longer about having fun, it's about completing it, which to some people is fun.
Well, it's
uh
like sure, but like at the end of the day, it's like it's always going to be what do you do about it, I suppose.
yeah, I mean, I know I bought Getting Over It when it came out. I played it for like 30 minutes and then never touched it again. You can probably figure out why.
I mean, you decided to buy that, now it's on you. I don't know what to tell you.
Yep, but that's just an example. uh
And what fun is a bit correlation with what you identify as your core values. Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely that. What do you identify as your core values, or what do you like, what do
yeah.
you think are things essentially? And you know, this ends up being like a very subjective subject. But at the end of the day, what we were talking about was like video games are there to they elicit emotions, and those emotions can go from, oh, let me lift myself up, and all the benefit that video game has, to um the negative rabbit hole that people use video game as an escape to not being able to control their emotions, to have self-control in general.
Mm,
And you could become toxic to other people, you become toxic to yourself, etc., etc.
yeah. I, there's plenty of people out there who play video games just to be good and seek validation that they are good, which can lead to stuff like that happening, yeah. But
It is, it's quite a bit, yeah.
yeah, if nobody else here has like anything to add to this topic, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this episode of the podcast up. Um, so I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode. Thank you, Dater, for the follow again. True Shot Killer, thank you for the follow as well. You followed while we weren't live, but I still want to thank you for following. Thank you for the follow as well, Haru. And thank you too for the follow, Goofy Blue Goober. You guys are all very lovely. Thank you. Oh, we really appreciate the support. Um,
Wow, so many people.
you guys are all super kind. But yep, and also I do want to reiterate that we did change the time that we start streaming this podcast from 2 o'clock p.m. EST to 5 o'clock p.m. EST. Uh, thank you for tuning in, Puinki. Sorry, I was just reading from the
What?
list of people who followed, and then I forgot. I forgot. Sorry.
What the hell?
Well, it's
Thank you,
really
Quincy.
really easy to default to just reading that list. I'm sorry.
What the hell? Thank.
Whatever.
What do you mean,
So yeah,
whatever? Thank
anyway,
you.
let me just like say again, the new time we stream this is every Tuesday at 5 o'clock p.m. EST. All right. So, and if you want to keep up with that information, follow and turn on notifications, or join my Discord server, and you'll get a mention every time we go live. So thank you all again for watching, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.